couldn't even swim a lap and, run, et cetera. And, 60 days from now, I'll be doing a full Ironman in Houston.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. This is the Freedom Club Podcast. I'm your host, Curt Mercadante. And because it is Wednesday, it's time for the interview segment. And today I have an awesome treat for you. Today's interview is taken from my Freedom Club local DFW held in Plano, Texas a few weeks ago. And I had three very special guests at that event. By the way, I had a lot of special guests because we sold out. We had about 50 people there. It was incredible. Thank you to everyone who attended. But I also interviewed three special guests. You heard from the first, Katie Wallace, last week from Huck Sustainables. I hope you listened to that interview. If you didn't, go back, listen to it, especially if you're an entrepreneur. If you're someone looking to make that jump, find your purpose and build a business around that purpose, please go back and listen to that interview. Today, you're going to hear my interview that I conducted with Chris Roussos. Now, Chris and I met back when I owned my PR and ad agency back probably around 2007, I would say. Chris was CEO of a separate company. He was a client, got to be a friend. We've been connected on Facebook ever since. But Chris is well known in recent years. He is the immediate past CEO of 24 Hour Fitness, major health and fitness chain here in the United States. And he's also he's a special advisor and a shareholder of that. He's also a U.S. veteran, and we talk a lot about, in this interview, about hiring vets. He oversaw at 24 Hour Fitness. They hired 11,000 veterans. So we talk a lot about that. We talk about leadership. We talk about development, being a true leader, building a company up. And I think you're really going to love, I know you're really going to love this interview today with Chris Roussos here on the Freedom Club Podcast. Without further delay, here is that interview.
Welcome to the Freedom Club Podcast, where we strive to pull you out of your life of quiet desperation, out of your comfort zone of misery, and propel you into a life of freedom and fulfillment. And now, here's your host for this journey, international speaker and coach, and serial entrepreneur, Curt Mercadante.
All right, is everyone enjoying themselves tonight? Yeah. All right, thank you. So our next guest is Chris Roussos. We met 12 years ago, I think. Chris was a client, and we worked together on some interesting stuff. And Chris is the immediate past CEO of 24 Hour Fitness, special advisor, shareholder now. And I really want to thank Chris for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. Chris is also a United States veteran of Army. Am I right? Am I correct? Okay. All right. We're going to talk about his work with veterans, and you have a special appreciation for the word freedom for a variety of reasons. What does that word freedom mean to you?
Wow. Waking up every day in the United States of America. That's what freedom is to me. We win the lottery every day. So it's extraordinary. So we get to make decisions and determine we're talking a whole lot about it tonight, attitude and altitude and how and who we are going to be. And that's just an incredible freedom that we have. And we're going to transition now and talk a little about veterans, but we're fortunate to have that because of those men and women who choose to raise their right hand and defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States. So it's extraordinary.
That's awesome. And I know how many veterans under your watch you quoted an outrageous number. Was it 11,000 veterans that were hired?
Yes, we've hired 11,000 veterans in the last 5 years.
That's amazing. And it's interesting. I have someone in my coaching program, and he is trying to become a coach for transitioning veterans. And we had an interesting discussion last week that when you ask maybe a random person about hiring a felon, oh, no. It's okay to say, no, I would never do that. You ask someone about hiring a veteran, and they immediately say, oh, yes, go USA. One thing that he said was there's actually hidden stigmas with veterans that he has to help them deal with, of whatever that stigma is. And, he worked at a desk, but he said he still has. He said, I fired a gun on the range, but I worked in a desk. I was overseas, and I sat behind a desk. But there was still this stigma that, these are his words, that he's going to fly off the handle, that he's going to freak out one day, and he's going to, whatever it is. obviously, you don't have that stigma of veterans. Have you ever run across that anywhere you've worked? Sort of that hidden stigma of vets?
Fortunately, I've not. And the reason why I've been so focused on hiring those men and women is when we hire veterans, particularly when you think about some veterans who have spent, 3, 4, 5 years of service, so they're coming out, 20, 25 years of age, they're coming out with so much experience when you think about teamwork, communications, deployed around the world. And I've been very, very fortunate. Now, certainly some of these veterans are struggling with a lot of issues, so you have to be aware of that and, accept that. And at the same time, it hasn't hindered or had any significant negative or detrimental impact on what we were doing, whether it be at 24-Hour Fitness or prior to that. We hired, of the 11,000, we hired 5,700 at a company called Epic Health Services, where we were serving medically fragile children coming out of the neonatal or NICUs. Many of them were coming home to die, and we just said, we're just not accepting that anymore. And with the work of all the men and women and a lot of veterans, we turned that around. And it's a sense of mission and purpose and focus that these folks bring every day to work, and it just is incredible to have those folks on our teams. And again, I just think fundamentally it's the right thing to do morally when you think about bringing these folks out and helping them transition into the civilian world.
Your service, how do you feel that it prepared you for a role as CEO and being a leader of people, but also building a business?
Backing way up, my father was in the military for 26 years, Green Beret, buried at Fort Bragg. Brother was 22 years, Green Beret for 18 of the 22, so a lot of leadership. And for me, I'll tell you, leadership and developing a sense of teamwork and being able to completely and fully, and when you think about what we're doing and what veterans deployed all over the world, is this absolute trust in your fellow teammates. And when you bring that trust and those experiences into what we do every day in the civilian world, and we think about it every day, and a lot of folks don't feel that sense of trust and that sense of pride and the fact that we call it cover and move, but you don't need to be looking over your shoulder. Let's focus on the task or the 2 or 3 things that are the priorities today, because you don't need to worry about all this other stuff that's spinning. And I think the military helped me get very, very focused around knowing who I am. And we talked earlier about, strengths and weaknesses, and then surrounding yourself with amazing men and women that will offset those things. And, from there you build extraordinary organizations. And it's fun to watch all these folks grow, and they're successful, and you're taking care of them and their families. And of course, they're taking care of our customers or whoever we're serving.
When you talk about fun and families, and we've been connected on Facebook for a few years, and you have one of my favorite Facebook feeds because you're like in a different location, 24-Hour Fitness location, like every week, and you're not in a suit and tie. I never see you in a suit and tie. You're sweating. You will have just done some sort of crazy class. There are certain leaders, I won't call them leaders. There are certain CEOs or certain people who at the top of companies who rarely get out of their office, much less maybe go amongst the masses, right? You're in a new place every week. You're having fun. Everything is about the family. It's about your team. It's about, them growing. It was Here We Grow Again. It was like a new location all the time. You're working out with them. You're sweating. You're running up mountains. You did some other, I'll let you, but I remember there was one I saw and I woke up in the morning and you had the mask on, were you cutting down on your oxygen and you were climbing? Because you did some climbing stuff. So tell us a little bit about that and what caused you to say, I'm going to go crazy here. I'm going to go out with them. I'm going to work with them. I'm going to sweat with them.
Well, I'll start with the mask. So I find it gives me an advantage on some of the events that I do, some of the races and different things, and that creates 18,000 foot of altitude here on, at 1,000 feet or whatever. So it changes your blood composition, so you're much more efficient and you're able to carry much more blood, and therefore your performance improves dramatically. So I'm training with a mask, and then of course, backpacks and weights and everything else. And it's like anything else, you show up very prepared, and then generally you put in the hard work before. And we talked a lot about, some of the guests tonight are talking about that work and what it takes to grind, and you do that early. And I think that also goes back to your earlier question about the military. A lot of those veterans that that we hire, they know how to grind, and that's served me very, very well. So, and your point too, I think when I think about what I do, I mean, I'm very purposeful in my role. I'm here to serve. Period. Full stop. I serve my team. We serve our members at 24, and or serving families and these amazing children coming out of the NICUs is struggling and hanging on by a thread. And failure is not an option. And you still that in the organization through that behavior, whether it's 2:00 in the morning and you're fixing treadmills with our Texan clubs, or you're bedside with a family and their child struggling, and or one of our teammates has a death in their family, and you're there to support them. And I think that just drives such a sense of cohesion and purpose and trust and authenticity. And there's there is no value sitting around a flagpole. You need to get out and lead from the front. And I always talk about it must be present to win. And healthcare, you're with patients and families, and at 24, you're with members and our staff, and ensuring we're supporting them so our members are having a great experience. So.
And you've gotten in pretty incredible shape. When we met, you were not doing these things 12 years ago that you're doing now. Part of it was being with the team. Part of it was, what was the other motivation to do that? I mean, climbing mountains and doing these challenges.
Very interesting. I mean, we talked about some of the transformations. In 2015, I was at my son's high school graduation with a family, and I saw a picture of myself, and I was just unacceptable. And that was 70 pounds ago. And, pre-diabetic, 70 pounds, sleep apnea, blood pressure meds, and wow, that was just talk about a personal failure. So I took personal accountability of that and responsibility, and couldn't even swim a lap and run, et cetera. And 60 days from now, I'll be doing a full Ironman in Houston. So, but it's just we all have our challenges. I had mine. I let myself go, and I got to take then personal responsibility to get myself back. And ironically, the timing of that and then the opportunity to join 24 was exceptional. So, my motivation, I think it translates to a lot of what our members struggle with every day and just their life's journey, and being real and relevant and putting that out there. People understood, and we're there to serve our members and our frontline team members that are amazing every day, and we do that well, and we're going to win. And also, you hire a lot of veterans in the midst of that, and you're going to win. Failure's not an option.
Jim Collins, and I forget which book it is, either Good to Great or Great by Choice. And he talks a story about the expedition, and one person went 20 miles every day, no matter how bad or how good the weather was. The other one said, well, when it's good, we're going to rest. Or when it's good, we're going to go. When it's bad, we're going to rest. And the one who went that 20 miles every single day won by like 2 weeks or something like that. And he talks about finding your 20-mile march. You've been at the helm of a number of very large corporations. What, if you had to think about it and identify your 20-mile march, what would that be? I didn't pre-plan it. It came to, as you were talking. I came to.
I think the 20-mile, and you mentioned an interesting stat, and unfortunately, compared to where you set the bar at 60 books a year, I'm a failure there. So I need to step my game up.
I didn't set the bar. I don't know who said that. I keep saying someone's trying to sell me books, and they say the average CEO reads 60 books a year. I get the Facebook ads all the time, so I'm repeating it. Probably
Yeah.
fake news.
Yeah, we're talking earlier about working out and listening to some music. One of our other guests earlier. So I'll typically knock through about 4 books a month. So I'm on track for 48, and then also similar, a lot of podcasts, a lot of great stuff you can learn there, and just documentaries. But I'll tell you, I think my 20 mile every day is that always understanding and figuring out where your either vulnerabilities are and/or areas you need to focus on and develop, and then attacking those. You're putting continuous, if you will, facets on who you are as a person and on your skills. So as an example here, recently I'm still spending a ton of time understanding artificial intelligence even more, and the application of that in the context of today's environment to improve how I think about deployment of that to serve our organization even better. So I'm just constantly thinking about what do I not understand and/or I need to improve more on, and then taking responsibility for that. Just similar to what I did with taking just a physical responsibility. I'm constantly putting additionally their new skills. It's all around mind, body, and spirit. So you become a holistic person. It's not just focusing on one thing. Sometimes it's Texas history, and sometimes it's artificial intelligence or global strategy or whatever it is. And I just think that continued renewal every day and just grinding through that, and in a good way when you're, how many times you need to listen to that album, right? I mean, turn that off and spend some time investing on perhaps something that you maybe need to learn something about personally or professionally. And I just find I do that, and it's fun to learn. And then the organizations too, when you think about more of why these organizations have been successful, is just enormous investments in the team members that are on the team, and giving them a lot of resources so they can allow themselves to realize their full potential. And then people love that, the fact that you care enough to make those investments in them. And then of course you get, loyalty and commitment, and of course from that foundational trust, and then you get performance.
I talked about your Facebook feed, and as much as you post pictures of being wherever, and traveling a lot, and being the CEO of a company, and there's equal amount of pictures of you and your family outdoors with your son. How do you find, as there's people with a two-person company, and they're struggling to find that alignment that between work, family, and self? How have you overcome the struggle of doing that? Because it's a struggle for everyone, and found the ability to find it.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, and I was thinking a lot about that. I haven't really thought a lot about that, but I'm one of the folks. I don't separate work and life and family. It's life, and that then drives a certain set of challenges. But with that approach, sometimes you're over-indexing in a great way with family, and then sometimes you have to over-index because you're getting ready to do a massive acquisition on the work front, and then having that very strong relationship with the family so they understand that is critical. And I've been fortunate and blessed. I mean, married this year will be 32 years to an amazing lady, and she puts up with me, and just an incredible life partner. And with that, not only holds us accountable, but at the same time allows us to have that flexibility, so we have life, and we don't try to separate it too much. And then sometimes if I'm getting out of whack, having that partner, she's like, hey, you need to step back, or go to Colorado and go climb with your son, or go and hang out with the kids, or whatever we're going to do. She's a great accountability partner.
So we started with vets, and I want to finish with vets. We talked about, from an employer point of view, and hiring vets and the benefits of hiring vets. What would you tell veterans, because there's a lot of them out there who are struggling to find work and are struggling with a variety of things, but is struggling to transition and find that work? What do you, and I'm sure you've talked to them, what do you tell them in terms of dealing with that struggle, getting past it, and finding work?
There are some amazing tools out there. More and more folks, I think, are awakening to the resource that we have called veterans, that we can employ and just get great impact from. So I think it's helping veterans translate those, what's called an MOS and or whatever their specialty was in the military, whether it be a mechanic and or infantry, or Army Ranger, SF, doesn't really matter, cook, admin, but being able to translate those skills into how that relates to a civilian experience or civilian opportunity that you're interested in. I think that's number one, but I think fundamentally all those experiences in the military are certainly important on the technical side, but we're hiring for communications, teamwork, trust. These folks just completely understand that, again, failing and not supporting your team is not an option, because you get that right, and all these other skills you can certainly teach them. But I think more and more companies are waking up to the fact that the veterans that are out there and stepping into the workforce, whether they're coming in to the workforce after 20 years of service or they're coming after their first enlistment, they're incredible assets and resources to be able to build extraordinary organizations. And there's a lot of great companies out there that recognize it. And I think searching, and then something also recently I just saw on Google, you can put in Google Veterans and then put your MOS, which is your job code, what you served under in the military. You can put that in there and it'll actually help you find employment, which is something I thought was really super cool, being able to help folks do that. I saw that in the last probably week or 2 weeks, which I thought was a really great addition, that they were helping those veterans find their pathway forward.
So anyone listening or watching is like, I got to get in touch with them. Where's the best place to get in touch with you, learn more about you?
Several of us already said it. I think LinkedIn's easy. And I mean, my number's out there. It's all over the planet. So I mean, it's 479-769-0103. That's my cell phone right here in my back pocket. And I get, no worries. My members have that. When I was in healthcare, all my families had that number, and it just demonstrates the trust in the people that are around you. And if you're willing to put yourself out there like that, then it's been fantastic. So, but again, that or they can track me down on Facebook and see some of the funny pictures as well.
They are fun. They're not funny. They're fun. Well, Chris, it's been great getting to catch up with you again. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us and sharing your story.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you got some value tonight. I really enjoy you being here. If you want information on wines, I also started the Freedom Club Wine Club. You're going to get an email from me if you want to join it. Jump in. If you want to taste some more wines, if you haven't tasted wines, if you want to buy wines, if you want to sign up, if you just want to smell the wines, if you just want to say hi to Carrie, go back there. But thank you all. Please drive safe. And I wish you a week filled with freedom and abundance. Thank you.